That aching lower back you've been living with, the one your doctor calls age-related, may have nothing to do with your age. It could be everything to do with what's been on your plate for the last 20 years. The new 2026 food pyramid points directly at two specific dietary mistakes that destroy the muscles supporting your spine. This video is educational, reflecting current nutritional research and the 2026 dietary guidelines for Americans. It is not a substitute for medical diagnosis or treatment. Chronic pain has multiple causes. Please consult your physician before changing your diet or discontinuing any medication. Chronic lower back pain is one of the most common complaints among people over 60. It limits movement, disrupts sleep, and reduces quality of life. For most, the explanation is straightforward. Discs wear down, vertebrae settle, muscles lose tone as you age. That explanation contains some truth, but it misses the nutritional foundation beneath the structural story. Musculoskeletal research and the 2026 dietary guidelines now acknowledge two powerful drivers of chronic back pain. They are not structural at all. They are nutritional. Understanding them changes what's possible in managing pain. Tell us in the comments, how long have you dealt with back pain? Were you told it was just aging? Send this video to someone who needs to hear their pain might have a nutritional solution. The first driver is protein deficiency. Not dramatic starvation, but chronic low-level insufficiency. This develops over years when an older adult follows outdated protein guidelines. The spine is held in place, stabilized, and protected by deep muscles, not just the vertebrae. These muscles, like the multifidus and erector spinae, are primary stabilizers of the vertebral column. When these muscles atrophy due to protein insufficiency and reduced activity, the spine loses its living shock absorber. Discs bear forces they weren't designed to manage independently. Pain follows, not because discs are uniquely damaged, but because the muscular scaffolding has been slowly removed. The 2026 dietary guidelines acknowledge this, with substantially increased protein recommendations for adults over 60. New targets are 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. Older muscle tissue has reduced anabolic sensitivity, meaning you need more protein for the same maintenance effect. If you're not meeting that threshold, your spine's protective muscles are in gradual net loss. Dorothy, 71, managed lower back pain with anti-inflammatory medications for 6 years. She was meticulous about her health. Low fat, limited red meat, plenty of grains and vegetables. Her estimated daily protein intake was around 55 grams. A therapist suggested she eliminate refined seed oils and increase protein through eggs, sardines, and red meat, targeting at least 90 grams per day. Within 3 months, she reported significant pain reduction. She discontinued 2 of her 3 medications under medical supervision. Her spine hadn't changed. Her internal biochemistry had, and so had the condition of the muscles surrounding it. The second driver is systemic inflammation, maintained by dietary patterns standard for decades. The primary inflammatory culprit is the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. Historically, this ratio was between 1:1 and 4:1. Now, it's often 15:1 to 25:1. This shift is due to widespread adoption of refined seed oils like soybean, canola, sunflower, and corn oil. Excess omega-6 is incorporated into cell membranes, serving as raw material for pro-inflammatory compounds. This means tissue around your lumbar spine is perpetually bathed in a mild but persistent inflammatory signal. Pain receptors become sensitized by chronic inflammation. They fire more easily, at lower thresholds. This is why a minor movement at 45 produces significant pain at 65. Structural deterioration is part of the story. Inflammatory sensitization of pain pathways is another. This is directly modifiable through diet. If you have a herniated disc, spinal stenosis, or structural instability, these interventions are supportive tools. They work alongside appropriate medical care, not as replacements for it. Your physician and physiotherapist are essential partners in managing the structural dimension. Nutrition addresses the biochemical environment, inflammatory load, muscular support, tissue repair capacity. Combining both is where the most meaningful outcomes emerge. Never change medications without your doctor's guidance. Eliminating refined seed oils from your kitchen does not require an expensive dietary overhaul. It requires replacing one category of products with another. Cooking fat in your home should be butter, ghee, tallow, lard, or extra virgin olive oil for cold use. These fats have omega-6 to omega-3 ratios that do not distort the cellular inflammatory balance. They also have stability under heat, meaning they don't oxidize and form toxic compounds when you cook. The seed oils most people use daily are among the most structurally unstable fats available. Cooking with them generates oxidized lipid species that compound the inflammatory load. Increasing omega-3 intake works through the opposite mechanism. EPA and DHA, the omega-3 fatty acids found in fatty fish, sardines, mackerel, salmon, and herring, are converted by the body into anti-inflammatory compounds called resolvins and protectins. These compounds actively suppress the inflammatory signaling in connective tissue, reducing the sensitization of pain receptors. This creates conditions in which tissue repair processes can actually produce meaningful outcomes. If you are done accepting pain as inevitable, write in the comments, "Done accepting pain." And leave a like so I know you are with me on this. Subscribe if you want to keep receiving content that gives you real tools to manage your health. 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week is sufficient to shift the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio meaningfully. This shift does not happen overnight. The cellular membranes throughout your body need several weeks of consistent higher omega-3 intake before the composition begins to change measurably. But it does change, and when it does, the inflammation-driven component of chronic back pain tends to reduce. Let me give you a practical starting protocol that addresses both drivers simultaneously. For protein, aim for a minimum of 30 grams at each main meal. At breakfast, 3 whole eggs plus a small portion of cottage cheese or Greek yogurt. At lunch, a palm-sized serving of canned fish, sardines, mackerel, or salmon, over leafy greens with olive oil. At dinner, a serving of red meat, chicken thighs, or another fatty animal protein. This distribution gets most people over 60 to the 90 to 100 gram daily target without requiring dramatic changes to meal volume. For inflammation, replace all seed oil cooking fats with butter or tallow today, and add 1 serving of fatty fish to your weekly routine, building to 2 to 3 servings over the following weeks. Both changes are achievable immediately, available at any supermarket, and require no prescription. The collagen dimension of spinal health is something that rarely enters the conversation about back pain in older adults, despite being mechanically fundamental. The intervertebral discs, most commonly implicated in lower back pain diagnoses, are composed primarily of collagen. The outer ring of each disc, the annulus fibrosus, is dense collagen tissue. The inner nucleus provides hydraulic cushioning. As collagen synthesis declines with age, disc integrity declines with it. The rate of collagen synthesis depends on several nutritional inputs: adequate vitamin C, which is required as a cofactor for the enzymes that cross-link collagen fibers; glycine and proline, amino acids that form the structural backbone of collagen, found in connective tissue foods like bone broth, skin, and gelatin; and zinc, which is required for collagenase regulation. The modern diet is systematically low in all 3 of these collagen precursors. Most older adults are not eating the cartilage-rich, connective tissue-rich foods that their grandparents ate routinely. They are eating muscle meat, which provides different amino acids but is comparatively low in glycine and proline. Adding a cup of bone broth daily, or incorporating collagen-rich cuts like oxtail, short ribs, or whole fish, provides the raw materials for disc and connective tissue maintenance in a form that supplements consistently fail to replicate. Magnesium is another nutrient that connects directly to back pain in ways that most people have never been told about. Magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, and among its functions is the regulation of muscle contraction and relaxation. Magnesium deficiency produces a chronic increase in muscular tension, a low-level persistent contraction that is particularly noticeable in the paraspinal muscles. This tension is not injury. It is the muscular response to insufficient magnesium, and it produces a characteristic tightness and aching, often indistinguishable from structural back pain without careful clinical assessment. Population surveys consistently show that the majority of adults over 60 are consuming magnesium below the recommended level. The gap between intake and requirement has been growing alongside the increasing prevalence of processed foods, which are systematically stripped of magnesium. The best dietary sources of magnesium are leafy green vegetables, pumpkin seeds, almonds, dark chocolate, and black beans. These are foods whose regular consumption the 2026 guidelines strongly support, and one of the reasons is precisely this relationship between magnesium adequacy and musculoskeletal function. Vitamin D connects the inflammatory and structural pathways in back pain in a way that deserves direct mention. Vitamin D receptors are present in the cells of the intervertebral discs, and vitamin D deficiency impairs the ability of disc cells to maintain their extracellular matrix. Several clinical studies have found significant associations between vitamin D deficiency and chronic lower back pain. Supplementation in deficient individuals has produced measurable reductions in pain scores. The 2026 guidelines address vitamin D primarily through food sources. Sardines, egg yolks, beef liver, and full-fat dairy, rather than supplementation, reflecting a shift toward the food matrix as the preferred delivery mechanism. If you have chronic back pain and you do not know your vitamin D status, requesting a 25-hydroxyvitamin D blood test at your next clinical appointment is a reasonable and low-cost step. Levels below 30 nanomoles per liter are associated with significantly increased musculoskeletal pain. Movement is the other half of the structural equation, and I want to address it briefly because the relationship between movement and the nutritional interventions we have discussed is synergistic rather than sequential. You do not need to wait until your nutrition is optimal to start moving, and moving does not substitute for nutritional adequacy. Gentle daily movement, even 10 to 15 minutes of walking plus some targeted spinal mobility work, improves circulation to the disc tissue, which has no direct blood supply and depends entirely on the fluid exchange created by movement and compression to receive nutrients and remove waste products. It also activates the muscle protein synthesis signal that makes dietary protein more effectively directed toward the spinal muscles. The combination of adequate protein intake and consistent gentle movement produces outcomes in back pain management that neither intervention achieves alone. Keep a simple weekly record for the next month. Each Sunday, note your baseline back pain level on a scale of 1 to 10. Note whether you made the dietary changes discussed this week, specifically the protein targets and the seed oil elimination. Note how much you moved. After 4 weeks, compare. The improvements in chronic inflammatory pain from dietary changes tend to emerge over 3 to 8 weeks, rather than immediately, which means that without tracking, many people abandon the approach before they reach the window in which it produces noticeable results. Tracking makes the progress visible in a time frame that sustains the motivation to continue. Your back is not betraying you. It is operating rationally under the conditions you have given it. Change the conditions, and the response changes with them. That is not optimism, it is physiology. The sleep disruption caused by chronic back pain creates a feedback loop that most patients are aware of experientially, but they rarely understand it mechanically. Pain disrupts sleep onset and sleep architecture. Insufficient sleep increases the production of inflammatory cytokines, particularly IL-6 and TNF-alpha. Elevated inflammatory cytokines sensitize pain receptors, lowering their threshold and increasing pain perception. Greater pain intensity further disrupts sleep. This cycle, entirely separate from the structural condition of the spine, can maintain severe pain levels in people whose imaging shows relatively modest structural changes. Breaking the cycle requires addressing the inflammatory load during waking hours through dietary changes. It may also require short-term support for sleep quality through the same nutritional approach. Magnesium glycinate before bed has a well-established relaxation effect on the nervous system that supports sleep quality. Protein at dinner stabilizes blood sugar overnight, reducing cortisol spikes associated with nocturnal hypoglycemia. These fragment sleep architecture, the same dietary interventions that address inflammatory drivers of back pain, also address the sleep disruption that perpetuates it. Posture and its relationship to nutrition is another connection that deserves a moment. The deep spinal muscles we discussed earlier, the multifidus and erector spinae, are postural muscles. They are designed for sustained low-level activation that maintains the neutral curvature of the spine during all daily activities. When these muscles are atrophied from protein deficiency, the body compensates by shifting the postural load onto passive structures: the ligaments, the discs, and the joint capsules. Ligaments and joint capsules are not designed for sustained load-bearing. They fatigue, become irritated, and contribute to the diffuse aching many older adults experience after sitting or standing for moderate periods. Rebuilding the active muscular support of the spine through protein adequacy is a postural intervention, as much as it is a pain management intervention. The spine relearns to hold itself through the muscles that were always supposed to bear most of the load. The financial dimension of this is worth addressing plainly, because I know some of you have been spending substantial amounts on pain management for years. Anti-inflammatory medications, physiotherapy co-payments, specialist visits, imaging, heat pads, specialized cushions, supportive devices. Chronic back pain is expensive. The dietary changes I have described cost somewhere between $0 and a modest weekly grocery increase, depending on what you are already eating. Replacing vegetable oil with butter costs roughly the same or less per meal. Adding sardines to a weekly lunch costs under $2 per serving. Increasing protein through eggs adds perhaps $3 to $5 per week. The return on that investment, measured in reduced medication dependency, improved sleep, greater mobility, and the ability to do the things you stopped doing because of pain, is not small. I want to close with the framing that I think is most useful for anyone who has been living with chronic back pain for a significant period. The structural explanation your doctor gave you is probably accurate as far as it goes. Discs do degenerate, vertebrae do settle, muscles do lose tone with age. None of that is fabricated. What is missing from that explanation is the second half of the story. The rate at which those structural changes occur, and the degree to which they produce pain, is powerfully influenced by the nutritional environment in which your spine operates every day. Better protein, less inflammation, more collagen precursors, adequate magnesium, and vitamin D. These are not alternative medicine. They are the biochemical inputs that determine whether your spine ages at the rate the structural explanation predicts, or considerably more slowly. You have more influence over that rate than anyone has probably told you. There are people who will watch this video, recognize themselves, make the dietary changes, and then stop after 2 weeks. Because the pain has not dramatically resolved, I want to address that possibility directly, before it becomes a reason to abandon an approach that is working. The inflammatory dimension of chronic back pain responds to dietary changes over a period of 3 to 8 weeks. The muscular dimension, rebuilding the deep spinal stabilizers through protein adequacy, takes longer. Typically 8 to 16 weeks of consistent dietary change combined with regular gentle movement. These are not short timelines by the standards of a pain medication that produces effect within hours. They are, however, permanent changes once established, as opposed to the temporary symptom management that medications provide. The comparison is not between fast relief and slow relief. It is between addressing the cause over weeks and managing the symptom indefinitely. Most people who stay the course report that the improvement, when it arrives, feels different from medication-based pain relief. The pain does not just become less intense. The baseline changes. The episodes become less frequent. Movement that was previously avoided becomes possible again. That is not the pattern of symptom management. That is the pattern of cause reduction. The 2026 Food Pyramid's approach to chronic back pain is not surgical and not pharmaceutical. It is architectural. Rebuild the muscular scaffolding of the spine through adequate protein, and reduce the inflammatory load through the elimination of refined seed oils and the introduction of anti-inflammatory fats. Both interventions are available in every grocery store. Neither requires a prescription. Both require the knowledge that most physicians, trained in a different nutritional era, were never given. That knowledge is now in your hands. Take the first step today. Go to your kitchen and look at the oil you are cooking with. If it is soybean, canola, sunflower, or corn oil, replace it this week. That single change, consistently maintained, begins shifting the inflammatory environment of your spine within days. Add an extra serving of protein to your next meal. These are not large actions. They are the beginning of a different direction. And in the management of chronic pain, direction matters more than distance. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. Leave a like and a comment below. It helps me reach more people who need this information. And if you would like to support the channel directly, the Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description. Stay well, stay strong.